Welcome. You're tuned to the Urban Affairs program. It's time to get up for Urban Perspectives with your host, Pete Rhodes.
Welcome. You're watching Urban Perspectives. I'm your host, Pete Rhodes. This edition is sponsored in part by Comcast and BMAnetworks.com. On this episode of Urban Perspectives, we discuss part 2 of the legacy of the African American contributions in education, business, health, and arts. It's a conversation about the history and the opportunities for the next generation's growth in our communities. Join us for another enlightening conversation about leadership on this edition of Urban Perspectives. Our first guest serves as the Area Development Director for the United Negro College Fund. She has been featured in multiple publications and named one of the top 25 influential women in Minnesota. She has 20 years of expertise as a marketing specialist, and she's a lady with big ideas and the know-how to execute them. Please welcome to Urban Perspectives, Sharon Akinsanya. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing great. How are you, Pete?
I'm so glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
You talk and we talk so much about this market and how we need to approach it as individuals to help the vibrancy of the community. Absolutely. And I thank you so much for that. Let's talk a little bit about your responsibilities over there as the area director of the UNCF. How do you advance its mission here in Minnesota?
Well, you know, my job at UNCF is to raise millions of dollars. I'm a fundraiser, so my job is to put money in the bank to make sure that we have enough, well, somewhat of enough to help low to moderate income kids pay for college. There's never enough money, but that's my job. So my job is to raise over $1 million from the state of Minnesota and surrounding areas so that we can keep kids able to pay for college. And also to help support our historically black colleges and universities. So UNCF is responsible also for raising money for our 37 member colleges. You may have heard of a few like Fisk and Spelman and Morehouse and Wiley and Tuskegee, etc. And that's important because 21% of all African Americans walking around with a bachelor's degree receive one from an HBCU. So it's really important that we do this work. That's what I do.
Now, who have been some of your local supporters, and how supportive has and is Minnesota in raising funds this way?
Well, you know, my job is to raise money from major corporations, groups, churches, individuals, and one of our goals is to expand our individual base. We do a great job from our major corporations in the state. I mean, we have 21 Fortune 500 corporations, and almost all of them do something with UNCF, and we're grateful for that. And so the state is very important to us and supportive with regard to fundraising. What we need to do some work on is our individual base, you know, because most of the fundraising, most money that is raised for nonprofits comes from individuals, and we want more of that.
Do you think we've gotten away from that as individuals? You know, we used to watch TV and watch the UNCF telethons and you call up, and do you think we've gotten away from that because we may not? I don't know.
No, I don't. I still, today, most of the money comes from individuals, not necessarily in the Minnesota office. We just have to do a better job of doing shows like this and sharing and letting people know that they can give to UNCF and ways that they can give. And so, but with the budgets being tight, I only have a 2-person office, so no, I don't think we've gotten away from it at all. In fact, I think it's increased with the ease of being able to give online.
And you can do it every day. You don't have to wait just a certain part of the year.
Absolutely. You know, you can just go right online at uncf.org/Minneapolis area and give.
There you go. Now, you've created a number of projects to help educate as well as empower women. How important is your work in this area as well and enhancing the contributions of women here? Well,
because, you know, moms are really the crux of when it comes to trying to figure out financial aid for college. We have a heavy population in the African American community of single female heads of household. So the work that I do for UNCF really impacts moms and women directly as they're looking for funds to be able to pay for college for their kids. Because college, as you know, the college costs have just grown, I mean, just skyrocketed. So my work really directly impacts women in this state.
Important, so important. Now, as a marketing expert, as you are, in your opinion, what does corporate America need to do to strengthen their relationship in our communities?
Well, you know, we are in a great state. 21 major corporate Fortune 500 corporations, and I think that they're doing a pretty good job. What I'd like to see them do, though, is really figure out a way to do more grassroots programs in the community where the community understands exactly where they stand, who they're fighting for. Take a stand. We want to know, we don't want you silent on some of the major issues of the day. So I think they can actually do a better job of just letting us know where they stand.
And we need to do a better job as well in creating those platforms. For
no doubt. No doubt. Whether it's what UNCF does coming up in February. Every year we do the UNCF State of Minnesota Leaders Luncheon on Education, where we have Governor Mark Dayton come in and do opening remarks, and he reports out on how are we doing in educating our students in the state. And we have other policymakers come in, like Commissioner of Education Brenda Cassellius and Commissioner Polga Miller. So we have a lot of people that come in, and this is in corporate supports that. So in our case, it's Target and Medtronic and U.S. Bank. They're major supporters of the UNCF Leaders Luncheon on Education. So that gives them a platform to help us create and convene the community, policymakers and community leaders and corporate leaders to have this discussion. So I'd like to see them do more of that.
Well, speaking of being able to do more of that, you are founder and producer of a new project, Moms Rock. What is the purpose of this program, and how will it connect women from all communities?
I think that I am an entrepreneur, as you know, and I have done lots of things in the community, like the Gathering, a Woman of Color Expo. But because I'm so in love with moms and women, I wanted to produce a weekend set aside just for moms. I want moms to come down to the Minneapolis Convention Center May 2nd and 3rd, 2015, and for a weekend set aside just for us to access the best that Minnesota has to offer to help us live life easier and healthier. Thousands of moms will be there, and it's important because we have to elevate the importance of work-home life balance in the state of Minnesota. If we're going to remain a great state to live, work, and play, moms need to be supported, and our working families need to be supported. So I'm very excited about it. And you know what's really exciting about this is that I've convened, as the founder, I've convened an entire team of mompreneurs that are running the entire event. So it's very exciting.
We'll be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to be there. Sharon,
absolutely.
Sharon Smith, Akinsanya, thank you so much for being here with us and bringing your aura.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Pete.
All right. Weekly here on Urban Perspectives, we present Shining Stars, brought to you by BMAnetworks.com, highlighting people, places, and events that contribute to the vibrancy of the urban community. Our Shining Star this week is a visual artist who uses recyclable materials to create art and meaning and connection to the environment. He utilizes his talents also to mentor all groups and disabled individuals, helping them to showcase their abilities. Born in Nigeria, meet our shining star, Adetomiwa Gbadebo.
My name is Adetomiwa Gbadebo. I am from Abeokuta, Nigeria. My work is typically created with multiple materials. I work on cardboard, doors, any object that I can possibly find. Not simply to shock people, but more of the utilization of resources around me to convey my message to the audience. And I typically use materials ranging from tape, nails, cloth, canvas, wood, tires, anything pretty much that aesthetically feeds to my imagination. My art is very focused on really trying to pull out the depth of your soul spiritually and subconsciously. Who I was influenced by is my mother, number one. The hardship that she had to go through, raising me, bringing me here, and just the things that she go through as a woman. She really influenced me, more than people think. And also, my grandfather, my late grandfather, the Oba of Gbadebo II of Abeokuta, he inspired me because of the leadership role that he had. It made me realize, understand who I am, and not just the status of it. It's more of what comes with it as a leader. Leader in any aspect in life, whether it's with youth, whether it's with adults, whether it's within your art. but leadership role. My name is Prince Adetomiwa Gbadebo, and you are watching Urban Perspectives.
Thank you, Adetomiwa. Coming up, an educator, administrator, and activist who has played an active role in the civil rights movement since her teenage years. Meet this outstanding contributor to our community, Dr. Josie Johnson, next on Urban Perspectives. In 1963, my next guest participated in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom with Dr. Martin Luther King. She has been active in the Twin Cities for justice for more than 50 years as the first African-American member of the U of M Board of Regents, a lobbyist, a community organizer, a mother of 3 daughters, and a mentor to many in all communities. There is a doctor in the house. Please welcome to Urban Perspectives, Dr. Josie Johnson.
Thank you very much, Pete.
I am so happy to have you here. Just seeing your face all the time, everywhere. You go somewhere, there she is. You go more than we do sometimes, but being in our community, you have been a mainstay, and so thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I want to ask you, you have an outstanding career as a leader, an educator, and a mother. When did you know that you were destined also to be as strong as you have been in our movements over the years?
You know, I don't know if we ever know that or plan for that. I was fortunate to grow up in a family of activists. My parents graduated from college in 1926 and 29. And they went to a small historic black school in Texas, Prairie View. My father wanted to be a lawyer, but there were no schools when he graduated, and so he became active with the Southern Pacific Railroad and worked in the dining car area. So he then organized the men there. So from that, and you know, when I think back to Pete, I was sharing with Mahmoud that it suddenly had a very strong impact that I was the 3rd generation from slavery. I met my great-grandfather, who was freed at age 12, and then my grandfather, my father, and me. So is that 3 or 4? Yeah. But to hear my great-grandfather talk about his time in slavery, then my grandfather, who was a Baptist preacher. My grandfather used to travel around in Texas, going to communities, talking to other black ministers, teaching them to read the Bible, teaching them to speak to their congregation. And then my father, you see, who helped organize dining car waiters. And my brothers and I followed him around when he was in town.
He was always there then.
Always there. And my mother, who got her degree in education and social work. And she worked with families and helped pay their rent, buy clothes for their children for school, help them buy food. So I grew up in an environment of, but for the sake of God go I, but also that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. You don't get rewarded for it.
You do.
It's what you do. And they modeled that for us.
Now, as a participant, Dr. Johnson, in the March on Washington with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, what was the most memorable highlight of that historic event for you?
You know, I was impressed with the fact that we were able, as a delegation from Minnesota, a small state, to have the distribution of people, ministers, rabbis, children, black, white, Hispanic, American Indian, for people to come together to listen to Matt Little, who was our chair. And Matt followed the rules that were laid out for us, and that is that we had to collect the money to do this march, to get a private plane. We had to meet regularly and read what we were instructed to do. We were to get there in time, to march, not too much earlier than that. We were to meet with our congressional delegation. Hubert Humphrey was a part of that.
Yes.
Gene McCarthy was a part of that. Don Fraser, Art Naftalin, who was mayor at that time. And they were there to greet us when we arrived.
Beautiful.
The other thing was, when I looked out of the church basement where we gathered, I didn't see anybody. So I was very worried that the campaign was going to work, right? By the time we assembled to join the march, there were these thousands and thousands of people.
They said
It was hot.
250,000 strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were able to march as a group in the heat, find a place under one of the trees. And I think I was impressed with the attitude of our people, with that assembly. They were there for something serious and special.
Let me ask you, Dr. Johnson, how do you maintain the energy and the will to continue the needed things that you must do to affect change in this short, brief moment here?
People like you, Pete, you give us hope. When I see that perhaps something will honor the struggle of our ancestors someday, that if we keep at it as they did, can you imagine slaves determined to read, to raise their children, to love their spouse, to be available? So when I see that, I know the potential. So that gives me the hope, and God is good.
Well,
I can get up every morning and put one foot in front of the other, so I have great hope. It's people like you and Kim and Mahmoud and others who inspire us to keep on keeping on, as my father would say.
Well, you stay right there. We've got more to come.
Thank you.
Stay right where you are as well, and after the break we'll discuss the new movement with the civil rights with Dr. Josie Johnson. Thank you for staying with us here on Urban Perspectives with my guest, Dr. Josie Johnson. Dr. Johnson, I wanted to ask you, if you compare yesterday's civil rights movement with today's activism that we're seeing, what is the difference between the two, or is there a difference?
You know, I'm not sure there is a reason for the a difference in the reason. In the early years, 50s, 60s, we were, as a community, focusing on laws that kept us from doing the things we thought we were entitled to or ought to. And I think what happened was the old effort that is so clear in many communities. There is a real effort to try to make us feel as a people that what you've done is different and rewarding, and you ought to be grateful for what's happened. We've been also taught to try to be like the majority group. So sometimes our people forget that we are not a part of the majority group, that we still have a lot to do and need to live up to the struggle of our ancestors. So I think the difference is we could see clearly the laws that needed to be changed.
I see.
We could see clearly strategies that needed to be done. And I believe that now our young people and many of our adults don't see, they think the laws that have been struck down represent freedom, rather than what is the true sign of freedom in our society, and that's a sense of who we are.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
You and I had an opportunity to work on a piece, if you recall, during the 2008 election, where we talked with you and our great friend, the late Matt Little,
Yes.
about the impending election of
Yes.
President Barack Obama. Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see that?
I never thought that. So I need to expand on that, if you don't mind.
Please.
I never thought that I would live long enough to see the election of an African American as President of the United States of America. But Pete, I never thought and never fully appreciated how deep supremacy and racism is in our society. I never thought that I would live long enough to see a Congress that would rather bring America down because we have a black president than lift it up. I never thought that I would see a time when America no longer respected the Nobel Peace Prize. It was diminished as a result of President Obama. People began to say, well, he didn't live, you know, all of those. I never thought that America could persuade poor white people who need health care that they could change the name from the Affordable Health Care Act to the Obama Care and get the kind of reaction. I never thought that we would elect as many state house people as we have. I felt that 2008 was a surprise to many. And the organization that took place after that was determined that whereas America made a mistake and elected an African-American president, that we'd never live to see the benefits of that. So I've been, you know, on the one hand, so energized by the fact that he has brought so much to this country and has been creative and brave and strong and able to introduce so many needed changes. That on the one hand. On the other, my sadness that America is not ready for creative, smart person who violates everything they were told that we represent. A man who honors his family, who speaks well, who is smart, who gets up every day in spite of the treatment he receives, and he believes in America. I think he believes in America more than most Americans believe in America.
Well,
so,
let me ask you this then. What advice would you give young people to become active, to ignite their passion and get involved socially and civically moving forward?
I think for our young people to get involved, their old people must get involved. I believe we as an adult community need to remember our history. We need to be forceful in the way we teach our history to our children. They need to know from whence they've come. They need to know that they come from strong, creative, imaginative, forceful people, because I think it'll affect how they carry themselves and what they do for their people.
Thank you so much, Dr. Josie Johnson, for being here with me, my great friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you for watching Urban Perspectives. I would like to thank our sponsors, UCare, Comcast, BMAnetworks.com, and my guests, Sharon Smith, Akinsanya, Dr. Josie Johnson.